Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the final team selection for Game Week 13, and there's plenty of content heading into the next deadline, such as the best free hit team video, wildcard squad, transfer tips, the initial team selection video where I show you some different transfer plans, and in this video I'm going to discuss the possibility of using my only free transfer in Game Week 13 and then talking about how that impacts my future plans, which I discussed in previous videos as well. If you haven't joined this one, then smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this to over 200 likes, and we're also getting closer towards 22,000 subscribers. There's going to be UCL fantasy content for match day 5, the best limitless, wildcard and team selection videos, the deadline stream. The same goes for FPL, of course, and the reaction stream. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. Unfortunately, the transfer I'm looking to do this week doesn't involve the goalkeeper, so I have to stick out with Areola for a little while longer, facing Burnley away. It's a decent fixture, and despite Burnley's troubles, losing 6 games in a row across all competitions, I still think that Areola is a decent option between the sticks. 1 clean sheet this season, hopefully makes it 2 in Game Week 13, and I still think West Ham defensive coverage could offer you some decent value over the next couple of weeks with the fixtures in mind, and Areola is still a good option because of his price. But of course, in terms of long-term goalkeeper, I would like to have a more secure option who can keep more clean sheets. For now, Areola's in here. If you want to see how I did in Game Week 12, check out the initial team selection video. But let's now head on to the defenders. At least I have one of the best defenders in Game Week 13, and that's Joachim Andersen facing Luton Town away. A lot of us want to strive to get that Crystal Palace defender for the next 2 game weeks, and the likes of Andersen, Mitchell and Gay are all solid, dependable options. In terms of goal threat and bonus points potential, Joachim Andersen is the best, but it's not a huge difference between the 3. You've also got Johnston in goal, who's been right up there as one of the very best goalkeepers in FPL this season. So I'm happy to have Joachim Andersen, and he's definitely going to start against Luton Town away. Now, next up is a bit of a tricky one. It's between Lascelles and Matty Cash for a spot in my defence, and I think 2 of my defenders are pretty nailed on and settled, but the third defender is pretty much between Lascelles and Matty Cash, and I'm currently going for Lascelles due to the clean sheet probabilities at home. If Newcastle set up defensively and deploy a low block, I think they have a good chance of keeping a clean sheet at St James's Park. But on the other hand, with Matty Cash, he's got a lot of attacking potential, and he's still #1 for XG, shots and a lot of other attacking metrics amongst defenders. So that's going to be one of the only team selection headaches for Game Week 13. The goalkeeper speaks for itself because Turner doesn't play anymore. I've also got the likes of Anderson and my other defender quite nailed on, and the rest of my team speaks for itself. But in terms of my third defender, it's Lascelles versus Cash. Both have difficult fixtures. Newcastle have the better chance of a clean sheet, but Cash has a higher ceiling and more attacking potential. My final defender is Saliba, who I signed last week, and he did very well for me. Straight after Arsenal conceded, Saliba scored and restored Arsenal's lead, so he has been very clutch for me in the last couple of weeks in FPL and UCL Fantasy, because he got me 8 points in match day 4 in UCL Fantasy, and he also got me a 9-pointer in Game Week 12 of FPL. So that's my defensive line. It doesn't look too bad. I think Lascelles is the obvious weak link, and in terms of clean sheet chances, I'd probably be backing Anderson and Saliba. My midfield was great last week, but there's some big decisions to make in this position. Diaby is going to be in here for now against Tottenham away, and then he faces Bournemouth away. Ideally, I would keep him for both fixtures, but Aston Villa have struggled on their travels, so I could still sell Diaby this week, and if not, it could be in Game Week 14, as I'll discuss later on using fpl.team. So Diaby isn't that nailed on in the long term. He is going to be a sell at some stage, but it's just a question of when. Is it going to be now? Is it going to be next week? Or maybe afterwards when he faces Man City? I think that's the ideal time to sell him, even though Diaby and Aston Villa look stronger in home matches. But facing Man City and Arsenal back-to-back in Game Weeks 15 and 16, that is a very good argument and reason why you should maybe start selling these Aston Villa assets, especially if you have a triple up in the villains such as myself. Now, my other midfielders do include the injury doubt of Jarrod Bowen, and he did miss out on the game against North Macedonia. He wasn't in the squad. The injury doesn't seem to be too serious, but Gareth Southgate said he didn't want to risk him. Let's see what his chances are of starting this weekend. We should get some more updates by David Moyes. I'm quite confident that he will be available, and as a result, I would be inclined to keep him, especially with those fixtures, his form. Antonio could be out in the long term with an injury, and that means Bowen could keep playing down the middle. But to be honest, I would argue he might be better playing off the right-hand side. And either way, he's West Ham's biggest goal threat. He has great fixtures. He's showing some real consistency in the Premier League, scoring a lot of goals. So to be honest with Bowen, the underlying numbers might not be the greatest, but he is showing some consistency in terms of his overall performances and the output in FPL. My next midfielder is going to be one of the very best in the game. That's Mohamed Salah facing Manchester City away. This will be one of the very few game weeks where I'm not really considering Salah for the captaincy. I'm not saying he shouldn't be captained by anyone because he did squat the Etihad last time out back in April, and he's always going to be a threat no matter who he faces. But in that fixture, I would fancy Manchester City's chances and also Erling Haaland over Salah in terms of a direct head-to-head battle for the captaincy. But Salah is still a decent option. I'm just not looking to captain him myself this week. If you disagree, of course, I encourage you to let me know why in the comment section on Discord, Twitter, Instagram. All the links are in the description below. But my other two midfielders do include the possible signing of Eze against Luton Town away, and he also follows that up with some really good fixtures in game weeks 14 and 15 as well, where that concludes with a fixture against Bournemouth at home. And I could do a switcheroo in terms of budget midfielders, so I buy Eze now for Gordon, and then in a few weeks time I would sell Eze to Palmer, which I'll show you later on using the visualization tool of fpl.team. My fifth and final midfielder here is going to be Saka against Brentford away, and that's going to be set in stone. And the only doubt really in terms of my midfield is whether I keep Gordon for another week or if I sell him this week for Eze, and it could even be Diaby making way instead. That'll be a big decision to make in my FPL team this week, so whether I sell Diaby or Gordon for Eze and then make a switcheroo in a couple of weeks time, or just roll the transfer this week and then bring in Mbeumo as planned in game week 14 and have two free transfers heading into game week 15. I'll be comparing the two sets of transfer plans from my initial team selection video and this one, and showing you the differences and what could end up determining my final transfer plans and whether I buy Eze this week or not. But let's now conclude this team with the forwards before talking about the captaincy and the bench. He has gone up in price yet again, this time to 8.5 million, and that is Ollie Watkins, who faces a depleted Spurs side with no Mickey van der Ven, Romero still suspended, Maddison is out, you've also got a few other injury problems there, Basuma suspended, so there are so many issues at Tottenham. It's a great time to play them, and despite Aston Villa struggling on their travels, I still think they can get a result here and at least score a couple of goals. I think it's going to be a high-scoring thriller, and it could go either way. I think Son could be a fantastic captaincy option this week against Aston Villa's high line. Watkins is also a good shout, this time from the away side. I think those two are probably the standout captaincy options in that match, but you've also got Diaby, who's a decent choice. You've also got a few others here and there, but I think Son and Watkins could be in the top 5 captains of Game Week 13 in the same match. And my final forward and player of my starting 11 is Erling Haaland. He's also an injured out, but as I discussed in yesterday's free hit video, it shouldn't be a big issue. Fabrizio Romano said he should be fit and ready to play against Liverpool, which to be honest doesn't surprise me. And he did miss out for Norway against Scotland with an ankle problem, and it's mainly due to a precaution. To be honest, it's nothing serious, and he should be available now for Game Week 13. It's also going to be the early kickoff there between Manchester City and Liverpool, so we can get confirmation about whether Haaland starts, is benched, or is left out of the squad. I think the latter is highly unlikely, almost impossible even, I would argue, and I'm very adamant that Haaland will start. I'm a bit more doubtful about Jarrod Bowen, but I'm also quite confident he will start as well, and that will also determine my final transfer plans, because let's say Bowen's injury might last a couple of weeks, I could sell him to Eze instead and keep the likes of Gordon and Diaby, and my transfer plans would shift slightly. But ultimately I am looking to make some changes in the midfield to bolster that position. But let's now talk about the captaincy, the bench, and other key factors to finalise this team. My bench speaks for itself. Turner doesn't even play anymore. Archer, Cash and Tsimikas is the right bench order, I believe. The only doubt I would have is Lascelles versus Cash. Do I go for the slightly higher chance of a clean sheet for Newcastle and Lascelles, or Cash's higher ceiling and attacking potential? And I'm currently favouring Lascelles, and that's the only big debate in terms of benching headaches that I will have in my team. I think Archer could feasibly start, and let's say Jarrod Bowen does miss out. I think Archer is a capable replacement because of the fixture there against Bournemouth. And the only concern that we have left really is the captaincy, and it's going to sound really weird, and it's going to be one of the very few times I'm going to do this. Both my captain and vice captain are on doubtful players at 75%. I know that's very risky. I could always switch to Saka as a solid and dependable vice captaincy option, or even Ollie Watkins, but I'm very confident that Haaland will start, so the vice captain doesn't really matter in this instance of Jarrod Bowen. But if both are available, I think that's the way I would order it. And if I personally had Heung-min Son, I probably would captain him over Haaland this week because of the nature of the fixture, and I think that game could be a bit more open and high scoring. Liverpool have been quite good defensively. They've got the least goals conceded alongside Arsenal and one of the highest expected goals conceded, or lowest expected goals conceded, should I say. So I think Haaland is still a good option. I think he will score a goal or two, but I'm still quite, optimistic about the likes of Heung-min Son if I did have him. Unfortunately, I don't, and that's why Haaland will probably be my final captain in the end. It's not ideal, but I certainly won't be captaining a defender. In terms of midfielders, Salah's still a shout. Saka is also good. Eze with the fixture in mind isn't really too bad either. Watkins and Diaby offer decent alternatives against Tottenham, but I think Haaland as the captain is the way to go, and then Bowen would be my vice. So that is my 50-man squad for Gameweek 13. The Eze transfer is not confirmed. That is a possibility and a key difference from this video and the last team selection, because that could change my transfer plans in the next couple of weeks and whether I have 2 free transfers in, let's say, Gameweek 16, as I'll discuss very soon. And that all plays a part in what's the best course of action in the long term, because there's also the blanks in Gameweek 18 to think about, a possible double game week in Gameweek 20. There's so much to really consider when making these final transfer plans, and having 2 free transfers and rolling at times can be very crucial. So let's now head over to Drafthound and fpl.team to provide some more numbers, key stats and analysis on my FPL squad. Drafthound updates the algorithm quite regularly, so sometimes the transfer suggestions will change week on week and also daily, but they're still recommending the same sort of transfer of Cash to Zinchenko or Anderson to Zinchenko, and they are kind of opting for that Arsenal defensive double up, which is something I'm looking to do in the coming weeks, but mainly through David Raya in goal instead of Zinchenko. I don't think it's really worth selling Anderson to Zinchenko, especially this week, but Matty Cash to Zinchenko is not a bad shout. The issue is, once Ben White comes back, you've got Tomiyasu facing off Zinchenko on the left-hand side, and Tomiyasu is currently first choice, and Zinchenko might be deployed in the easier games, especially against these low blocks like Sheffield United and Burnley, but he's going to get the odd benching and he's not going to be the most consistent option, and he generally isn't anyway because of his injury record. But just to show you a few different key areas of this website, you've got the player rankings, you've got chance of scoring a goal, expected points over the next 3 game weeks. You can also kind of highlight that to the next game week. You've got chance of scoring, assist, brace, hat-trick, yellow card. All of that is there in Drafthound, and as you can see, Haaland is definitely favoured by the algorithm, despite the fact that he is facing Liverpool and he's currently flagged in FPL. You've also got the fixture analysis. You can determine it by clean sheet chances, or maybe through a more attacking lens of chances of scoring 2+ goals. You've got Arsenal at the top over the next 5 game weeks. There's a player comparison tool. One of them is Saka versus Foden, which is highlighted, but you can pick any sort of players you want and you can compare them in terms of expected points or any other metric that you wish. And there's also the predicted lineups, and they're currently going for Ramsdale, which makes sense because Raya is ineligible to play against Brentford, his parent club, and some minutes might not be completely accurate, but generally speaking, they get a lot of predicted lineups spot on, and you can check it out for any team, not just Arsenal. You've got Aston Villa and all the Premier League teams there available if you become a Pro Pay-Tim member using my link. So be sure to check out for free first. Let me know what you think, and then if you wish, you can upgrade to the Pro Tier membership, and you can also have access to all of these great tools at your disposal. But let's now head over to fpl.team, which is a free resource. I'm going to be looking ahead for my future transfer plans in Game Weeks 14, 15 and 16, and that could all be impacted by what I do in Game Week 13, whether I roll the transfer or buy Eze. In Game Week 13, I've got an expected points total of 58.5, which is slightly less favourable than what Drafthound gave me. But if we look ahead to Game Week 14, the transfer plans wouldn't be different. It's the exact same of buying in Mbeumo, this time for Diaby. And of course, the big difference here is that I would also have Eze because I bring him in Game Week 13. But the other day, I discussed rolling the transfer this week, and then looking ahead to Game Week 14, for example, I would still have Diaby away to Bournemouth instead of Eze away to West Ham, but I would buy Mbeumo for Gordon in that set of transfer plans. So things are a bit different in terms of the order when I sell certain players, but ultimately I will have the end result around Game Week 16. It's just a different way of reaching those same transfer plans and the exact same 50-man squad by that time period. So Mbeumo would come in either way in Game Week 14. Great long-term fixtures until January, around Game Week 21, which is when he sets off to the African Cup of Nations. Before then, Brentford have some fantastic fixtures and potentially a double game week in Gameweek 20 as well. Let's now look ahead to Gameweek 15, and this is where I could use yet another free transfer, and that will be David Raya in for Turner, and I'd still have 0.1 million in the bank, but it would be cutting a bit short, and I would be relying on certain players not going up in price, and also those I'm looking to sell not going down in price. So this is a bit risky, and with the other transfer plans I discussed last week, I had more room for maneuver in terms of more free transfers and more money in the bank because of the way and the order of the transfers, the players I'm selling and the ones I'm buying. But Raya would be coming in around Gameweek 15, facing Luton Town away, and I'd double up on that Arsenal defence. But things, of course, will be a bit tricky, and maybe I won't be able to afford this in a couple of weeks' time when it really matters. But in Gameweek 16, I would use yet another free transfer, and that's to sell Eze to Parma when Crystal Palace face Liverpool at home, and Parma has Everton away and a great set of fixtures up until Christmas. But pretty much, as you can see here, it's the same result in Gameweek 16. It's just a different way of approaching it, and buying Eze as a short-term punt for the next 3 game weeks to really take advantage of Crystal Palace's fixtures over the next 3, and also maybe to chase some points and be a bit more aggressive over the next couple of weeks after the international break, and really trying to claw up that ground that I have lost in the opening 12 game weeks of the season. Palmer is a good long-term option. He's on penalties. He's a cheap option, but ultimately he has been a bit fortunate, you could say, and from open play I still need to see a little bit more. There could be new players rising to the surface, and my transfer plans could change as the weeks evolve. So this is not set in stone what I'm going to do in game weeks 14, 15 and 16, but I have a rough idea of what I would like to do. I think some transfers like Mbuma are quite nailed on, but the likes of Palmer, definitely not. I might not even get Eze this week. I could stick with Gordon and Diaby long term, but there are some different transfer plans I have, and ultimately it just comes down to preference and maybe some instincts and what I feel in the moment when I make the transfers and pull the trigger. But thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know if you prefer the set of transfer plans I discussed last week or the ones I discussed today, and it really just is down to Eze being bought in Game Week 13 and being a bit more aggressive, and if not, just rolling the transfer and sticking to the transfer plans, having more room for maneuver for other transfers potentially, and also more money in the bank as well. I appreciate you watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to the 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 22,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and also Drafthound, which I showed you earlier. I'd highly encourage you to check it out as well. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 13 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.